A dog can change the way you see the world. I believe this to my core. About 12 years ago, I was out one evening for a walk with my neighbor, and she turned to me and she said, "God, I wish I had your life. You are so perfect." I was like, what? I could not believe that this woman just said this to me, because at the time, I would have never wished any part of my life on anyone. In fact, she did not know that her words were the catalyst that led me back into my house and upstairs to make a plan on how I just wasn't going to be here the next day. Now, you know the saying, when the student is ready to learn, the teacher appears. And mine was across the room. She had 4 legs, she was yellow, and she had a full body wag that would make you crazy. A dog can change the way you see the world. I look back on that dark moment and often wonder, like, how the heck did you end up there? And like most stories, they all begin in childhood. Thank you, Mom and Dad, right? So I want to take you back to a moment when I was 12. And my mother was picking my brother and I up at the airport following our Christmas break down at Grandma and Grandpa's in Florida. I remember the night because it was pouring rain, and the moment I got in the car, I already could tell something is not right here, but it was very quiet. As we were headed home on I-95 South in rush hour traffic, so basically we're just sitting there in a parking lot, she finally opened her mouth and she said, "I have something to tell you two." And instantly I knew it wasn't going to be good, and I felt that lump in my throat well up. Now, I diverted and I looked immediately at the driver next to me and watched as the rain trickled down the window and decided, okay, those will be my tears because this one is not crying. And I started to command myself, you will not cry, you will not cry, you will not cry. And I didn't. Now, I was young when my parents split up and rocked my world, and a few weeks later, my father was in the doorway saying his final goodbye and walking out for the last time, and I felt that same lump in my throat, and those same commands came up. You will not cry, you will not cry, and you will never let anyone do this to you or create this kind of pain in your life ever, ever. And so in an instant, I made a decision. Something that a lot of people do when they don't want to deal with something. I just got busy. I became the quintessential overachiever. I entered this world that I now define as the overdoingness world. And I started to do things all the time. I started to get up extra early every single day, and I would stay up late in the evening and checking the boxes and achieving all sorts of things, exceeding all types of expectations, because it was that second that I decided the only thing that I could do was stay busy, and such was birthed a belief that doing and overdoing consistently would be the best way to keep myself safe. And you know what? It worked. It worked really, really well. In my 20s, in my 30s, in my 40s, I spent a lot of time overdoing and creating things, businesses, and a life that from the outside people thought, wow, this lady, she has got it all together. But I really didn't. And I want to explain to you what it looked like on the inside, because overdoingness is just that. You're constantly on the move. I would get up at 3 to 4 a.m. I would start work. I would continue until late at night, going and going, doing more and more. The constant emails, the back-to-back meetings, the trips, the deals. There was zero white space in my calendar, because at the same time, gotta be perfect mom, perfect wife, perfect friend, perfect volunteer. And people would look at me and be like, my gosh, how do you do all that you do? And I would say, well, I just love it. And I think for the longest time I probably did, because it was doing its job. But over time you start to feel this drift begin to set in, because that's what happens when you're overdoing. You get to a point where this belief system that was designed by a 12-year-old stops working. And the truth of the matter was I was constantly exhausted. I looked like I had no life in me, and people would even ask, "Are you okay?" I was exhausted, I was depleted, I was overwhelmed, I was overworked, and I was deeply, deeply unhappy. The funny thing about this time in my life is that you start to notice clinical depression does not show up and announce itself and just take you over. It is something that creeps in little by little. It's so slow you don't even recognize that something's changing until suddenly these lights that used to be around you start dimming and dimming until suddenly everything is flat. And that's the thing, that's the moment you've been avoiding your entire life, right? So you start to scramble. Oh my God, I'm feeling stuff and I don't want to feel this stuff. And so you start to work harder and do more. But this modus operandi that worked so long ago just doesn't work anymore. And you get panicky and you start working harder and doing more. But that light is dimming so fast, dimmer, 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 dark. And you find yourself in your room planning how you're going to take your life. That critical morning, there was my dog, Bolo. She was in a crate. So excited. Okay, I have a picture, yellow lab. She's got the full body wagon. She's just so exuberant, like, it's a new day, Mom. Let me out. And so I walked over to where she was and I opened the crate. And she did her little happy dance like she always did. But she knew something was off. And I sat down on the floor. Of course, she had no idea what I was thinking and what was going to be happening. And then she did something this dog never, ever did before. She just crawled into my lap, and she just sat there. Didn't move, just looked at me. She licked my face. I could smell that puppy breath. And in that second, something cracked in me, and I realized, I'm like, my gosh, this dog is giving me something that my entire adult life I never once gave myself. And it was just this gift of presence, this quiet presence with nothing going on. She gave me this sense of feeling a little bit of worth without all this work and stuff happening. And certainly, as a dog does, she gave me unconditional love in that moment. And so I started to pray, and I begged God, please just give me the courage and the strength for one more day. I'll do one more day. And if I get this, I promise I will watch this dog. I want what that dog has. It would be amazing to wake up like that dog. And so I started to really lean on this yellow Labrador Retriever. And yeah, I loved her, but I was really seeking to just learn from her. Because at that time, if it wasn't for her, I just don't know what would have been. And so as I began to watch her, I was reminded, dogs don't hustle. They're not struggling to get past some sort of pain usually. They're just present beings and creatures, right? They're not confusing busyness with aliveness. They're joyful and then they play and they're tired and they sleep. They love unconditionally, and they always, without apology, are authentically exactly who they are. And I thought, ooh, what would it be like if I gave myself permission to just be like that? Now, this dog came to me from Leader Dogs for the Blind originally. As a professional dog trainer, I actually trained her to be the eyes for someone visually impaired. And as often happens, these dogs get career changed and sent back to their puppy raisers, which was so appropriate because I was so deeply visually impaired. And yet she gave me this chance to see through this new lens and to rediscover a vision for my life, to reconnect with a purpose, and most importantly, to have a sense of hope in my life again. She saved my life, and then she showed me how to live it. And that's exactly what I did. And everything I learned has become the foundation for everything that I do today. I started to ask myself important questions, just simple ones like, what do you want, really? And who do you need to be to fetch that life that you want so badly? But the more important question was, are you going to have the courage to actually get up and become this lady and be her? Well, I chose yes, of course. And what I started to do was run everything I had been doing through a resistance audit, as I called it. And through that, I became brutally discerning. And I started to regain pieces of what I wanted to be and how I wanted to live. Now, over time, everything that I went through this process and the lessons, these hundreds of anecdotal lessons that I gathered, ultimately putting together in a book, became my philosophy of how I live, still live today, and how I work with people. Call it fur-covered wisdom. And so now I get to watch entrepreneurs and teenagers that I get to serve do things like dig up their own joy, chase their dreams, fetch what they want, explore with curiosity, make time for play, and most importantly, find the ways that they will always leave their mark. I know a dog can change the way you see the world, to my core. And what I also know is that dogs never are struggling through a to-do list to have a good day. They just have a good day every day. And that one lesson right there was the magic for me, and I hope for everyone else.